When a power-hungry HOA president disappears without warning, leaving her 3 kids to run wild in the neighborhood, guess whose property they chose as their personal battleground? What started as spilled juice and broken sprinklers turned into something so insane, it had the entire street calling the cops. But that wasn't even the worst part. Stick around, because what happens next will leave your jaw on the floor. There was toilet paper streaming from my satellite dish like party streamers. My flower beds looked like someone had let loose a raccoon with a paintball gun. My motion lights had been shattered, one of my lawn chairs was stuck halfway up a maple tree, and to top it all off, someone had carved but into the hood of my red Ford pickup using what I could only assume was a house key. And there they were. 3 kids standing at the edge of my driveway like it was their personal playground. One boy held a hammer. Another had his pockets stuffed with spray cans. And the smallest one, a girl with curly brown hair and mismatched socks, was chewing on a Capri Sun straw while giggling at the destruction. None of them were older than 12. My voice cracked with fury. "Where's your mom?" The oldest boy just shrugged, smearing blue paint down the front of his hoodie. "She said she's busy," he muttered. "Told us to hang out outside." I stared at them, heart pounding. These weren't just any kids. They were her kids. Karen Lively, HOA president. The woman who once fined me for leaving my garbage bins out 15 minutes past pickup. The same woman who held HOA meetings in her backyard but never invited a single person. And now, she'd left these kids alone, unsupervised, and they were tearing my property apart like it was a birthday piñata. And she was nowhere to be found. Not a single neighbor knew where Karen had gone. Not her husband. Not her stuck-up best friend, Patrice. And for some reason, no one seemed to care that the kids had been unsupervised for almost 3 days. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I told the kids they could stay at my place. Only for the night. Just one night. I didn't know it then, but that decision would lead me straight into a storm of lies, secrets, and betrayal buried right beneath the HOA's pristine lawns. But before we get there, let me tell you how it all started. 2 weeks earlier, I was out front planting marigolds under my mailbox when Karen's minivan sped down the road like a bat out of hell. She didn't even slow down at the stop sign, just flew around the corner like she was late for a royal banquet. That wasn't unusual. Karen was always in a rush, too busy to wave, too important to say hello. She had a reputation around our neighborhood. She ran the HOA with an iron fist, collected fines faster than a parking enforcer, and somehow always had the final say on everything. And still, for all her noise, nobody really liked her. They just feared her. At that point, I'd only ever had 2 real conversations with her. One was when she told me my porch swing was not in compliance with community aesthetic standards. The other was when she threatened to tow my brother-in-law's car because it didn't have guest parking clearance. So when I saw her vanish like that, no texts, no warning, I didn't care. In fact, I felt relieved. Until the kids started showing up. The first morning, it was just the oldest boy, Mason. He knocked on my door looking for a phone charger. Said his mom was sleeping in and he needed to call a friend. I let him charge his phone in the garage and thought nothing of it. The next day, his younger brother Caleb was with him. They asked if they could use my garden hose to have a water fight. I didn't see any harm in it. Kids being kids, right? Then came Daisy, the youngest. She walked into my backyard like she owned it, dragging a pink pillowcase filled with cereal boxes, 2 dolls, and a chihuahua. "Hi," she said. "Can we watch TV at your house?" That's when I realized something was off. I gently asked if their mom knew where they were. "Yeah," Mason said. "She left us a note. Said to be good and not to bother anyone." He handed me a crumpled sticky note. It said, "Back soon. Be nice." Mom. That was it. I asked how long ago she'd left. "Dunno," Mason said. 3 sleeps? 3 sleeps? My gut turned to ice. I did the neighborly thing. I went door to door. No one had seen Karen. A few people shrugged and said she must be on one of her surprise getaways. She does that, Patrice told me while sipping wine on her porch swing. Needs her alone time. The kids know how to handle themselves. Alone time? They were 10, 8, and 5. It wasn't long before things started going south. The first disaster was minor. They pulled all the lemons off my tree and made lemonade with ketchup, pickle juice, and sugar. I laughed it off. Kids get bored. The second time, they flooded my garage trying to create an indoor slip and slide. That wasn't so funny. Then they started bringing friends over. 12 kids. No, Karen. They dug holes in my yard. I painted my garden gnome black and named it Demon Steve. Built a treehouse with my recycling bin. And every day I told myself, she'll be back tomorrow. But she wasn't. When I tried to report it to HOA security, they brushed me off. Said it wasn't within their jurisdiction. I considered calling CPS, but part of me kept hoping she'd show up and make it all go away. I didn't want the kids getting taken. I didn't want to be that neighbor. So I fed them. Gave them water. Let them crash on the living room floor. I started locking my bedroom door at night, just in case. And then, one Thursday morning, everything snapped. I woke up to the sound of breaking glass. Ran outside in my boxers and saw the horror show. Spray paint on the garage door. Every lawn gnome was beheaded. My birdbath is in pieces. And my truck, my baby, was scratched, dented, and vandalized. A message carved into the hood. But, standing there, I felt a heat rise in my chest like I'd never felt before. I turned to the kids, who were sitting on the curb tossing pebbles into the gutter, looking satisfied. "Where is your mom?" I shouted. "She's at the hotel with her boyfriend," Daisy said. She said not to tell. The hammer fell from my hand. "What hotel?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "I don't know," Mason said. "One with blue chairs in the lobby shed. Don't call unless someone dies." I felt my jaw clench. That was it. That was the moment I decided to stop waiting. And just as I picked up my phone to call someone, anyone, my doorbell rang. I opened the door, and what I saw made my heart stop. Standing in front of me was Officer Raymond Sanchez, the neighborhood patrol cop I'd spoken to only once before, when Karen reported me for illegal backyard fireworks on the 4th of July, even though they were sparklers. He had one hand on his belt and the other holding a notepad, his face unreadable. "Morning, sir," he said. "We've had a report of unsupervised minors staying at this address. Mind if I come in?" Before I could even form the word yes, Mason burst past me and shouted, "We didn't do anything. It was just a joke." Raymond raised an eyebrow and looked over my shoulder. From where he stood, he could already see the trail of destruction in my yard, not to mention the scribbled crayon graffiti all over my front hallway wall. "I think we're going to need to talk," he said. The next 20 minutes were a blur. I explained everything, the days without Karen, the kids showing up like strays, the vandalism, the note. I showed him the sticky note. He squinted at it, sighed, and tucked it in his notepad. "You let them stay here, voluntarily?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "I didn't want them outside alone." He nodded slowly. "Well, you did the right thing by keeping them safe. But this is starting to cross into abandonment. I'm going to have to file a welfare report." That word hit me hard. Abandonment. It wasn't just a temporary vanishing act. Karen had left them. She'd made a choice. And now, it was officially on record. I sat on the porch steps after Officer Sanchez left, head in my hands. The kids were inside watching cartoons like nothing had happened. Part of me wanted to kick them out, but another part, maybe the better part, felt something twist in my chest. They were just kids. Loud, messy, and totally out of control, but not evil. They didn't ask for this. I went back inside and sat them down. No more breaking stuff. No more spray paint. And if anyone comes over, you tell me first. Got it? Caleb nodded. Daisy gave me a thumbs up. Mason stared at the floor. That night was quiet for once. Too quiet. I made them mac and cheese, and we sat in awkward silence. Daisy told me her mom had gone on mommy vacations before but always came back by the weekend. This time felt different, she said. Caleb didn't say much. Mason barely touched his food. Later, I found him sitting on the back porch by himself, staring up at the sky. You okay? I asked. He shrugged. She always does this when she meets someone new. I sat next to him. You mean a boyfriend? He nodded. They don't stay long. She says we ruin it. That broke me a little. I didn't know what to say. What do you tell a kid who thinks he's the reason his mom disappears? You didn't ruin anything, I said finally. That's not on you. He didn't respond, but I saw him wipe his eyes. The next few days were manageable. I started giving them chores. Cleaning up after themselves. Taking turns with the TV. I even found an old inflatable mattress in the garage and set up a kids' corner in the living room. Neighbors began noticing. One even dropped off a tray of brownies, whispering, I always knew something was off about Karen. Some people smiled at me in the street. Others whispered behind closed doors. I was the person sheltering the HOA president's kids. Then came Saturday. The day everything turned. I woke up to the sound of sirens. Panicked, I raced to the front door and saw flashing red and blue lights. Not one, or two, but 3 squad cars. A 4th vehicle pulled up behind them. It was black. Sleek. Tinted windows. And out stepped a woman I hadn't seen in over a week. Karen. Her heels clacked on the pavement like gunshots. She wore sunglasses and a smug smile, like she was walking into a cocktail party instead of a scene she'd created. Her hair was pulled back tight, lips painted firetruck red. She waved casually at the officers and walked right past me toward the kids, who had gathered at the front door, wide-eyed and silent. Mama! Daisy cried. Karen bent down and hugged her. Miss me, baby? My blood boiled. Where the hell have you been? I asked, barely holding it together. She didn't even look at me. I needed a break. Is that a crime now? One of the officers started to speak, but Karen cut him off. I'm their legal guardian. You have no right to keep them. She abandoned them, I said, voice rising. Prove it, she snapped. She pulled out her phone and waved it like a trophy. I've got texts. I told them where I was. I said I'd be back. They were fine. The officers hesitated. One of them looked to Raymond, who shook his head slowly. There's still an active welfare report, he said. You'll need to come with us to sort this out downtown. Karen smirked. Fine. Let's go. She turned to the kids. Get in the car. None of them moved. Karen's smile faltered. Now. Mason stepped forward. I want to stay here. My heart nearly stopped. What did you say? She asked. I said we're staying here. At least until someone figures this out. You don't get to decide. Karen shouted, suddenly furious. She turned toward me, finger pointed like a weapon. This is your fault. You think you're some hero? You're a joke. A lonely man playing house with someone else's kids. I didn't speak. I just looked at Mason, then Caleb, then Daisy. Their eyes said everything. The officers told Karen to calm down. They gently escorted her to the car. She shouted the entire way, flinging curses and promises to sue me into the Stone Age. As the black car drove off with her inside, the street went quiet again. Too quiet. And then I turned around. My front door was wide open. My living room window was shattered. And the kids, they were gone. I ran through the front door so fast I nearly slipped on one of Daisy's stuffed animals. The broken window had a jagged edge of glass still clinging to the frame. The curtains billowed from the breeze, and the house was eerily silent. Mason. Caleb. Daisy. I called out, chest tightening. No answer. I bolted down the hallway, checked every room, empty. The closet doors were open, the inflatable mattress was deflated, and the TV was still playing some animated show like nothing had happened. Panic gripped me. Had they run away? Did Karen somehow get someone to take them while the officers were distracted? My mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. Then I saw it, a trail of muddy sneaker prints leading out the back door. I followed them. Out through the yard, around the side gate, and into the woods that bordered the neighborhood. We called it the Green Strip, a thick line of trees between our community and the nearby freeway. Kids used to play there during the summer, but no one went too deep, it was easy to get lost. I didn't even grab a flashlight. The sky was starting to dim, and I was running on pure fear. Branches slapped my arms as I pushed through the underbrush. I kept shouting their names. Finally, after 10 minutes that felt like hours, I heard a small voice. You think he's mad at us? Daisy. I turned sharply and found them huddled behind a fallen tree, sitting in a patch of dirt. Mason stood protectively in front of the other two, eyes hard. What are you doing out here? I gasped, out of breath. We thought you were going to send us back, Mason said, jaw clenched. She's our mom. Nobody listens to kids. We thought. If we hid, maybe you'd still let us stay. I dropped to my knees. Listen to me, I said, looking each of them in the eyes. I wasn't going to send you anywhere. Not like that. But you can't run. That's not how we fix things. Daisy sniffled. Are we in trouble? No, I said. You're safe. But this has to stop. No more hiding. No more wrecking stuff. I need your help if we're going to figure this out. They nodded. Even Mason, after a long pause. We walked back together, slowly, the forest now feeling darker but somehow quieter too. When we got home, I patched up the window with cardboard and duct tape. I made grilled cheese for dinner and let them pick a movie. We watched it in silence. That night, Mason knocked on my bedroom door. I was sitting on the edge of the bed, thinking about what to do next. I know where she went, he said. I looked up. What do you mean? He handed me an old flip phone, one I hadn't seen before. She left this in her closet. It's not her main phone. She uses it for her secrets. The messages were still there. Hotel confirmations. A man's name. A place called Sable Pines Retreat. It wasn't just a vacation, she'd been planning this for weeks. I reported it to Officer Sanchez the next morning. He took the phone as evidence, promising to pass it up the chain. Karen would be facing real consequences now. But while we waited on updates from the police, things started to change in the neighborhood. Karen's friends turned cold. Patrice stopped waving. 2 board members of the HOA called for an emergency meeting to address recent rumors. I wasn't invited, but I didn't care. Something deeper had started happening. Neighbors began checking on one another. Mrs. Halverson brought over board games for the kids. Mr. Dunn gave Mason an old skateboard. Even the quiet guy from across the street offered to babysit if I ever needed a break. For the first time in years, the neighborhood felt like a community. One afternoon, I got a knock on the door. It was Karen's husband. I hadn't seen him in months. Rumor had it they were separated, but no one ever confirmed it. He looked tired. Not angry, just worn down, like someone who'd been drowning quietly for a long time. I heard what happened, he said. I'm guessing you didn't know about the hotel, I replied. He shook his head. I knew she needed space. I didn't know she'd leave the kids. I wasn't allowed to see them. I let him in. The kids were at the park with Mrs. Halverson, so it was just the two of us. He sat at the kitchen table and ran a hand through his thinning hair. She always controlled everything. The HOA, the house, even me. I stayed quiet for years because I didn't want to lose them. I said nothing. I could tell he was unraveling truths that had been knotted for a long time. I want to make things right, he said finally. But I don't even know what that looks like. It was the first time I felt any sympathy for the man. I told him if the kids wanted to see him, I wouldn't stop them. But it had to be on their terms. He agreed. That night, I tucked them in and told them their dad had come by. Daisy smiled. I miss him. Caleb looked unsure. Mason said nothing. The house was quiet again, peaceful. Then, boom! A loud, cracking bang shattered the silence. The sound came from outside, followed by screaming. I ran out the front door and saw smoke rising from the end of the street. The kids followed me, barefoot and panicked. And there it was. The HOA clubhouse, on fire. Flames danced through the roof. Neighbors poured out of their homes. Someone was shouting for help. And in the middle of it all, I saw a silhouette darting away through the hedges. A small silhouette. Carrying something in their hand. Stay here. I shouted to the kids as I ran down the street barefoot, not even feeling the gravel under my feet. The air was thick with smoke, and the flames clawed at the night sky like a monster let loose. The clubhouse had stood for 20 years, a neatly painted brick building that hosted HOA meetings, book clubs, and the occasional overpriced bake sale. Now, it was collapsing in slow motion, windows cracking under the heat, the community sign melting like wax. Neighbors stood frozen on their lawns, bathed in orange light. Someone had already called the fire department. Sirens howled in the distance, but they weren't there yet. Then I saw it again, darting between hedges. Small. Fast. Definitely a child. Hey! I shouted, chasing the shape. I pushed through Mrs. Halverson's side yard, ducked under her laundry line, and caught a glimpse of a red hoodie vanishing behind her shed. Stop! Come back! I yelled again. By the time I reached the other side, the figure was gone. But near the corner of the fence, something caught my eye, a small, charred bottle with a rag stuffed into it. A homemade firebomb. I froze. Not a prank. Not an accident. This was deliberate. And it wasn't just any kid who did this. It was one of mine. I didn't want to believe it, but the truth lodged itself in my throat like a stone. I walked back to the house in a daze. Fire trucks had arrived, and neighbors gathered in clusters, whispering and pointing. One woman gasped when she saw me holding the scorched bottle. "What is that?" she asked, but I didn't answer. I was too busy thinking. By the time I got home, the kids were inside, sitting on the couch. They looked scared. Caleb had his arms around Daisy, who was crying softly. Mason sat apart from them, staring at the floor. I closed the door behind me and locked it. "Which one of you was at the clubhouse?" I asked. No one answered. I saw someone run. Small. Hoodie. Still, no one spoke. I set the scorched bottle down on the table. "This was found in the bushes near the fire. Does it belong to any of you?" Caleb looked at Mason. Mason's fists clenched. "I need the truth," I said. "Right now." Mason stood up slowly. "I didn't mean to burn it down." The room fell dead silent. "I just wanted to make a statement," he said, voice trembling. "It wasn't supposed to catch like that." I stared at him, stunned. "Mason, that's arson." "That's... I know what it is," he snapped. But no one listens. She gets to disappear for days, come back, and act like nothing happened. Everyone just lets her. I wanted them to see what she really is. He was crying now, shoulders shaking. Caleb looked like he wanted to disappear. Daisy started sobbing louder. I felt the weight of the entire neighborhood pressing down on me. Mason, I said gently, you could have gotten people hurt. There were propane tanks in that clubhouse. If it had gotten to the back room. I know, he shouted. But nobody cares unless something explodes. And that was the real issue. Not the fire. Not the clubhouse. The rage. The neglect. The feeling that nothing they said mattered. That no one was coming to help them, no matter how loud they screamed. I sat down across from him. You're not bad, I said. You're hurt. You're scared. But this isn't how we fix it. He wiped his nose on his sleeve. Are you going to tell? I have to, I said quietly. But I'll be with you. Through all of it. The next morning, I called Officer Sanchez. Told him everything. Mason sat next to me the entire time, silent and pale but nodding along. They didn't take him away. Not yet. They opened a juvenile investigation, and a counselor was assigned to speak with all 3 kids. For once, the system didn't crush them. It leaned in. It listened. I thought things might finally settle down after that. But then, 2 days later, I found something slipped under my front door. A folded piece of paper. Inside it, a printed image. A photo of Mason, me, and the other 2 kids, taken from a distance. And a typed message. You've been warned. Get rid of them. Or we will. I stepped out onto the porch and looked up and down the street. For the first time since this all began, I didn't feel safe in my own neighborhood. The paper trembled in my hands, even though the morning air was still. I looked at the photo again, zoomed in, grainy, but clear enough to see the kids' faces and mine. It had been taken from the east side of my property, near the bushes by the utility pole. Someone had been watching us. I turned in slow circles on my porch, scanning the street. Joggers passed. Sprinklers ticked rhythmically. The world looked normal, but everything inside me screamed it wasn't. That message wasn't from Karen. This wasn't her style. This was someone else. Someone who'd had enough of me playing Good Samaritan. I stepped back inside, locked the door, and shut all the blinds. I didn't want the kids to see the photo yet. They'd been through enough. But of course, nothing ever went according to plan. While I was making toast and eggs, Mason walked in, shirt wrinkled, hair messy, and holding the letter. I found it by the couch, he said, voice low. Who took this? I didn't lie. I don't know. But someone's trying to scare us. Caleb and Daisy appeared behind him, eyes wide with questions. I hated how used they'd gotten to tension, how quickly they recognized fear on an adult's face. Are we going to have to leave? Caleb asked. No, I said quickly. No one's making us go anywhere. But inside, I wasn't so sure. I filed a report that afternoon. Officer Sanchez promised they'd increase patrols, but he was honest. Without a name or camera footage, there wasn't much they could do. We've had some sentiments rising since the fire, he said carefully. There are folks who blame the kids. Or you. Or both. So they're sending threats now? I asked. He didn't answer directly. Just tapped the photo. Watch your back. And maybe install some cameras. That night, I did exactly that. Bought the best motion sensors and doorbell cams I could afford. My front porch became a small fortress of blinking red lights and silent watchers. Still, I slept lightly. Every creak felt sinister. Every bark made me flinch. But the next few days passed without incident. No new threats. No Karen. No surprises. And in the silence, life started to feel almost okay. The counselor, Ms. Brenner, was coming 3 times a week now. She was firm but gentle, someone who looked the kids in the eye and spoke to them like they mattered. Mason hated her at first. He folded his arms and refused to answer questions. But after a while, he started opening up. One afternoon, I overheard him ask her, "Do you think broken people can become unbroken?" She didn't flinch. "I think people can grow. Even if the cracks don't go away." They kept talking after that. For hours. Daisy started drawing again. Her pictures were full of weird stuff, unicorns with eye patches, flying hot dogs, but it was better than silence. Caleb built a massive Lego tower and asked me to take pictures of it like it was a real skyscraper. They were healing. And I was beginning to believe maybe, just maybe, we'd find our footing again. Until Sunday. It was right after dinner. I had just finished washing dishes when I heard a knock. Not on the front door. On the back door. I dried my hands, confused. No one ever used the back door. I opened it slowly. And there she was. Karen. But she wasn't wearing her usual stiff blouse or designer heels. She looked wrecked. Hair tangled, lips dry, mascara smudged. Her jacket was stained, and her shoes were mismatched. She stepped forward, eyes glassy. "They're my kids." I didn't answer. "I know I messed up," she said, voice cracking. "But they're mine." I still didn't say anything. Behind me, I felt the air shift. Mason stood in the hallway, frozen. Karen saw him. "Mason," she said, smiling weakly. "Baby, come here." He didn't move. "I made mistakes," she continued. "But I'm your mother. You can't just take them from me." I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. "Karen, you don't get to show up like this. There's a process now." You walked away. Her eyes flared. "I needed to. You don't know what it's like. Always needing to be perfect. Always judged." "You could have asked for help," I said. "I didn't want help," she snapped. "I wanted out. And now I'm here to fix it." "Too late for that," I said, trying to keep calm. "You've been reported. The investigation's open. You need to talk to your lawyer, not me." Suddenly, she reached into her coat. My heart dropped. But it wasn't a weapon. It was a set of keys. "I'm taking my kids," she whispered. "One way or another." And before I could say anything, she shoved past me, yanked open the door. Only to be met by a scream. Daisy was standing there, eyes wide, holding a flashlight like a weapon. "Go away," she cried. Karen froze. Then she turned and ran. Not walked, ran. Out through the yard, down the driveway, vanishing into the night. I locked every door. Called Officer Sanchez again. Gave him the full report. This time, they issued a protective order. Karen Lively was now legally barred from approaching the kids or my house. But I couldn't shake the image of her, wild-eyed, desperate, unraveling. I thought that was the worst of it. Until I checked the doorbell cam footage the next morning. And saw her standing in my yard at 3:12 a.m. Just watching the house. Silent. Still. Alone. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the frozen image on my screen, Karen, standing motionless beneath the flickering porch light, her face half hidden by the shadow of the cam's night vision. She wasn't moving. Just standing. Watching. 3:12 a.m. The time burned into my brain like a brand. I rewound it again. Played it twice. 3 times. She didn't knock. She didn't approach the door. She just stood there for almost 10 minutes, and then walked away. That was last night. Now, it was nearly sundown, and I hadn't told the kids yet. I didn't want to scare them more than they already were. We were all running on edge, paranoid, exhausted, and tangled in a mess that was growing darker by the day. Ms. Brenner was supposed to stop by that evening, and part of me was counting the minutes until she arrived. But at 5:42 p.m., I got a text from her. Running late. Car trouble. Be there by 7. So I did what I always did lately. I tried to keep things normal. We made spaghetti. Daisy spilled juice on the counter. Caleb asked to build another Lego tower. Mason barely spoke. But I caught him checking the locks. Twice. He knew. Even without seeing the footage, he knew. At 6:15, the power went out. Everything, TV, lights, security cams, gone. The house plunged into silence. The kids screamed. I ran for the fuse box. It wasn't tripped. The streetlights were still on outside. The neighbors had power. Just our house. I grabbed my flashlight and phone. No new messages. No service. The landline was dead. Something was wrong. I tried the front door. It was unlocked. I stared at the frozen image on my screen, Karen, standing motionless beneath the flickering porch light, her face half hidden by the shadow of the cam's night vision. She wasn't moving. Just standing. Watching. 3:12 a.m. The time burned into my brain like a brand. I rewound it again. Played it twice. 3 times. She didn't knock. She didn't approach the door. She just stood there for almost 10 minutes, and then walked away. That was last night. Now, it was nearly sundown, and I hadn't told the kids yet. I didn't want to scare them more than they already were. We were all running on edge, paranoid, exhausted, and tangled in a mess that was growing darker by the day. Ms. Brenner was supposed to stop by that evening, and part of me was counting the minutes until she arrived. But at 5:42 p.m., I got a text from her. Running late. Car trouble. Be there by 7. So I did what I always did lately. I tried to keep things normal. We made spaghetti. Daisy spilled juice on the counter. Caleb asked to build another Lego tower. Mason barely spoke. But I caught him checking the locks. Twice. He knew. Even without seeing the footage, he knew. At 6:15, the power went out. Everything, TV, lights, security cams, gone. The house plunged into silence. The kids screamed. I ran for the fuse box. It wasn't tripped. The streetlights were still on outside. The neighbors had power. Just our house. I grabbed my flashlight and phone. No new messages. No service. The landline was dead. Something was wrong. I tried the front door. It was unlocked. But I know I locked it earlier. I turned, heart hammering. Then, crash. Glass shattered in the kitchen. I ran back. Window smashed in. Curtains fluttering. A brick on the floor. Wrapped in a note. You were warned. I spun around. Mason had already pulled Daisy and Caleb into the hallway. He was gripping a baseball bat I didn't even know he'd found. And then we heard it. Footsteps upstairs. She was in the house. I didn't think. I grabbed the bat from Mason, shoved the kids into the bathroom, and locked the door behind them. Don't open it unless it's me. I yelled. Then I went up. Each stair creaked louder than the last. I could barely breathe. The hallway was dark except for my flashlight beam, cutting through the shadows. Karen, I called. You don't have to do this. No answer. Then, thud. Something dropped in the guest room. I pushed the door open fast. Empty. But the window was open. Curtains blowing. A chair beneath it. She was gone. Again. Playing games. But it wasn't over. I called the cops the second the power came back, 20 minutes later, like it had never gone out. They found nothing. No sign of her. No fingerprints. Just the brick and the note. Officer Sanchez stayed with us until 11 p.m. that night. The kids wouldn't sleep. I didn't blame them. He said she'd probably skip town again, now that she knew she couldn't get what she wanted. He promised patrols. Promised backup. But deep down, I knew the storm hadn't passed. It was about to break wide open. Because the next morning, the cops did find something. Not Karen. Not more threats. A hidden room. In Karen's old house. Behind a false wall in the basement laundry room. Inside, stacks of cash, burner phones, wigs, license plates, documents under 4 different names, and photos. Hundreds of photos. Of me. Of the kids. Of the neighborhood. Some dated back years. It wasn't just a breakdown. It wasn't just a mother running away from stress. Karen Lively had been planning something far more disturbing. She didn't just vanish. She disappeared on purpose. And the worst part? They still hadn't found her. Weeks passed. The kids were put into emergency foster placement, but the court gave me temporary custody. I didn't ask for it, but I accepted it. Because I couldn't bear to watch them leave with strangers again. The HOA disbanded. Patrice moved out quietly in the middle of the night. The rumor was, she knew something. Maybe more than she ever let on. The clubhouse was never rebuilt. People didn't talk much after that. Lawn parties stopped. HOA newsletters stopped coming. The street looked the same, but it wasn't. Not really. And every now and then, I still check the porch cam at 3:12 a.m. Just in case. One night, months later, I got a letter. No return address. Inside, a photo. The kids. Me. And her. Watching from a distance, hiding behind a tree. On the back, 3 words. I never left. The photo wasn't old. It was taken 2 days ago. And this time, she wasn't alone. If you thought that was wild, wait till you hear what she left behind in her basement. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next shocking chapter. Got a crazy HOA story of your own? Drop it in the comments, we're always watching. See you next time on this HOA Lost.